Right now, while you're watching this, there's a good chance something outside your window is already watching you. Not in a creepy way, not like a movie, but in a quiet, constant, deeply intelligent way you've probably never considered. The birds in your backyard. They aren't just singing randomly. They aren't just moving from branch to branch without thought. And they are definitely not as simple as they seem. Because what if I told you your backyard birds have been talking about you? Not in words, not like humans, but in a language made of calls, pauses, flight patterns, and silence. And worse, they've been forming opinions about your habits, your presence, even your mood. And the strange part? You've probably already seen the evidence without realizing it. That moment when they suddenly go quiet as you step outside, or when they return to the same spot the second you leave, or when one bird seems to always signal before the others react. None of that is random. By the end of this video, you'll never look at your backyard the same way again, because what your birds are really saying is far more personal than you think. And it all begins with something you've been missing your entire life. It usually starts in a way you almost ignore. A quiet morning in a backyard just like yours. A few small birds hopping near the edge of the ground, acting like they've done 100 times before. Nothing unusual, nothing that should catch your attention. But then you notice something strange. They don't react to everything the same way. A certain bird lifts its head the moment you step closer to the window. Another one freezes for half a second longer than the rest. And then, almost instantly, the entire group shifts position like they've silently agreed on something you were never part of. That is your first clue. Here's what's actually happening. Birds are not just reacting to movement. They are constantly mapping risk, safety, and familiarity. In studies from researchers like John Marsluff at the University of Washington, corvids in particular were shown to recognize individual human faces and remember them for years. But it goes even deeper than recognition. Your backyard birds are building a behavior profile of you. The surprising fact is this. They don't just know you exist. They learn your timing. They learn your patterns. When you wake up, when you approach the window, when you usually come outside. And once that pattern is stored, their behavior changes around it. That sudden silence you've experienced, that's not fear alone. That's information being passed instantly through the flock, almost like a living alert system. And here's the part that hits differently. Inside a bird's brain, regions similar to the amygdala in humans light up during threat evaluation. Hormones like corticosterone spike when uncertainty appears. To them, you are not just a background object in their world. You are part of the environment they are constantly calculating. That is not a metaphor. That is biology reacting in real time. But that was only the beginning, because once you understand how they see you, the next question becomes even more unsettling. What exactly are they saying about you when you're not looking? You start to notice it more often now. That split second of silence when you open a door. The way a group of birds suddenly spreads out across different branches, like they've rehearsed it. Or how one single bird seems to test the air before the rest decide it's safe. It feels coordinated, almost intentional. And in a way, it is. Before we go deeper, you need to know one key thing about how birds actually think. Their brains are built for prediction, not reflection. Unlike humans, birds don't sit and analyze the past in long chains of thought. Instead, they constantly predict what is about to happen next based on patterns, sound, motion, and memory. That prediction system is powered by highly developed brain regions like the hippocampus, which is involved in spatial memory, and the nidipallium caudolateral, often compared to a primitive prefrontal cortex. In simple terms, this means birds are constantly running real-time simulations of their environment. You are part of that simulation. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Studies from places like Cornell Lab of Ornithology show that many backyard birds can distinguish between harmless human presence and threatening human behavior within just a few encounters. They don't just see you, they categorize you. Safe, unpredictable, routine, dangerous. And once you are categorized, the entire flock responds accordingly. That is why their behavior sometimes feels so eerily synchronized. One bird detects something, another confirms it. The group adjusts in seconds without a single visible signal. What looks like chaos is actually a highly efficient communication network built on calls, wing movement, and timing shifts humans barely notice. Now here's the part that changes everything. What if those subtle calls you hear are not just warnings to each other, but also reactions to you specifically? Because some birds don't just observe, they remember. And if they remember you long enough, their behavior around you begins to change in ways you can actually test. For example, if you step outside at the same time every day and stay still for a few minutes, you might notice something surprising. The birds stop treating you like a variable and start treating you like part of the landscape. That is when the real shift happens. And once you see that shift, there's no going back to how you used to think about your backyard. If you're finding this fascinating, and you want to understand the hidden intelligence behind what your birds are really doing every day, subscribe now. No sponsorships, just the secret life of the birds in your backyard. But even that is not the deepest layer. Because what they learn about you goes far beyond safety or danger and starts to reflect something much more personal. At this point, something subtle starts to change in how you feel in your own backyard. It's no longer just birds being birds. It starts to feel like you are part of something you can't fully see, but can absolutely be noticed. Because here's the deeper layer most people never consider. Your backyard birds are not only reacting to you, they are adapting to you. Every time you step outside, pause at a window, feed them, or even simply exist near their space, you are shaping a pattern in their world. And in nature, patterns become memory. Memory becomes expectation, and expectation becomes behavior. This is where things get truly mind-bending. In controlled behavioral studies, birds exposed repeatedly to the same human actions begin to shift their stress responses. Their hormone levels stabilize, their flight distance shortens, their alert calls become less frequent. But when something breaks the pattern, even slightly, the entire system reacts instantly. Because to them, you are not a person passing through. You are a recurring event in their environment. And recurring events are either safe or dangerous, depending on consistency. Now imagine this happening every day in your backyard. The birds are not judging you like a human would. There is no emotion of liking or disliking you in the way we understand it. Instead, there is something more mechanical and more honest. Prediction. They are constantly asking, without words, what will you do next? And over time, that question becomes so refined that your presence alone can shift their entire behavior before you even move. That sudden stillness you sometimes feel when you step outside, that's not silence. That's calculation finishing in real time. And here's where it becomes personal in a way most people never expect. Because certain birds begin to respond not just to your presence, but to your routine, your morning, your habits, your timing, even the emotional energy you carry through movement and speed. Slow, predictable movement often calms them. Sudden, irregular motion triggers alert networks across the flock almost instantly. It's not mystical. It's not supernatural. It's a living system learning you better than you realize you're being observed. And once you understand that, you stop seeing your backyard as a background and start seeing it as a conversation you've been part of this entire time without ever hearing the full message. But the real question now is this. If they are learning you so precisely, what exactly can you do to change what they've learned? Once you realize your backyard birds are learning you, the next thought naturally hits you. Can you influence what they learn back? The answer is yes, but not in the way most people expect. Because you are not training them like pets. You are shaping a shared rhythm. Start with something simple you've probably already noticed in small moments. Birds respond strongest to consistency, not intensity. If you appear at the same time each day, move in similar patterns, and avoid sudden, unpredictable gestures, their alert systems begin to lower over time. What was once unknown variable becomes expected background presence. But here's the part most people miss. It's not just timing, it's behavior language. For example, when you step outside and pause instead of moving immediately, many birds interpret that stillness as low threat. In field observations from ornithology studies, reduced motion correlates with shorter alarm call durations and faster return to foraging behavior. In simple terms, calm humans create calmer birds. Now try this observation today. Go outside and stand quietly for a few minutes at a consistent spot. Don't chase them, don't approach them, just exist in the space. Watch what happens after the initial alert phase. At first, there may be distance, some calls, a brief pause in activity, but then something subtle begins. One bird returns, then another. And eventually, the environment resets around your presence instead of against it. That is not trust in the human sense. That is recalibration. And once recalibration happens, you start noticing even stranger details. Certain birds begin appearing at the same times you do. Some positions in your yard become safe zones where activity resumes faster. Even feeding behavior, if it exists in your yard, starts to align with your patterns. You are no longer just observing them. You are part of the system they optimize around. And if that sounds like a small thing, consider this. Every flock in your backyard is constantly exchanging microsignals, calls, movements, pauses. They are building a living map of safety in real time. And you are one of the fixed points on that map. But there's still one final layer left. Because everything they've learned about you leads to something even more personal than behavior. It leads to recognition. Recognition is where everything quietly changes. Because at some point, your backyard birds stop reacting to you like you are just something that appears, and start reacting like you are someone they know, not in a human sense, not with faces and names, but through patterns so consistent that your presence becomes instantly identifiable long before you even notice them. A sound of a door, a shadow near a window, a shift in air movement. To you, these are small, meaningless details. To them, they are signals they have learned to associate with you specifically. And this is where it becomes almost unsettling, because recognition in birds is not passive. It is active memory. Studies on corvids and other highly intelligent birds show that once a human is recognized, the response to that individual can remain stable for years. Not just fear or comfort, but specific behavioral adjustments based on past encounters, which means your backyard is not being experienced fresh each day. It is being remembered, layer by layer, day by day. And here's the final truth most people never stop to consider. Your birds are not watching you from a distance. They are sharing information about you in real time across a living network of calls, movements, and reactions that stretch beyond what your eyes can track. So when you step outside and everything suddenly goes quiet for a moment, that is not emptiness. That is awareness updating. Now, the most important question is no longer what they are saying about you. It's whether you've ever really been alone in your backyard at all. And if you've made it this far, you'll never hear birds the same way again. Because now every call, every pause, every sudden movement carries a second meaning you can't unnotice. If you want to keep uncovering what your birds are really doing, thinking, and remembering in your own backyard, subscribe now. No sponsorships, just the secret life of the birds right outside your door. And the next time you step outside, listen closely. Because this time, it might feel like they already know you're coming.